back of CNBC's DP World sponsored session, Railways Africa is just taking a moment to lean into the conversation of how we enable trade to actually move efficiently through our African continent. An absolutely scintillating piece of policy, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. It really is. There is so much possibility for Africa, the continent, stimulating that trade. None of it works without effective transport and logistics. And whilst I might talk about rail specifically, rail as the backbone, it's not the only element. So where does DP World come in, and how are we actually going to reach these goals that we've set?
You're 100% right. And where we have seen, countries or economies getting right, it's when there's an intermodal solution that looks at it as an ecosystem rather than, oh no, there's rail and there's road and then there's the infrastructure of ports and the airport. We as DP will look at it as a connected system. Our terminal in the UAE is connected to an airport. Our terminal in the UAE is connected to a free zone. It's connected to the road network. It's connected to the best ocean connectivity. So I think in Africa's case, rail, road, the interconnectivity with the terminal, the interconnectivity with special economic zones has to be created. And we see that as a huge opportunity for a company like ours that has done it in other markets. And we want to redeploy that expertise and capital into growing Africa. And that's aligned with the Africa Free Trade Agreement because these are the enablers that are needed to be able to facilitate trade within Africa and then with Africa and the rest of the world. If I add it all up, we have invested $3 billion in the last 3-4 years, and there's another $3 to $4 billion that we will be investing. In West Africa, we're developing a new port-free zone in Senegal, $1.2 billion project. We're developing a new port in the DRC, in a place called Banana. We're expanding our port and logistics infrastructure that connects Mozambique with South Africa and Zimbabwe. We're putting $200 million in that. We're investing in East Africa, in a market like Tanzania, where we are also expanding our terminal capacity, putting in new equipment. In terms of rail, our strategy there is to invest in rail opportunities that link up with our ecosystem. The rail link between South Africa and Mozambique, for example, is of huge interest to us in terms of what investment is required along that corridor to be able to connect it better. The rail connectivity with Zimbabwe and Mozambique as well, because we have a terminal in Maputo. So we are looking at rail projects aligned with making these corridors more competitive, enhancing the efficiencies of it, because today everything largely moves on road. But rail is a very important element that needs to be addressed as part of the ecosystem.
Pleased to see that you've taken rail as such an important backbone as part of multimodal infrastructure in your transport and logistics. Roll out for me open access and the opportunities here for you here in South Africa, and then maybe give me a bit more details in terms of your rail projects in the continent.
Slots that have recently been announced are of interest. We're further down the road in rail reform than we've ever been before. It's encouraging. There's lots of I's to dot and T's to cross. Primarily now it's assessing the rail infrastructure to understand what the state of that rail infrastructure is and how many trains you can run. Our interest, as Mohammed said earlier on, our interest is in the Maputo Corridor, or what we call the Maputo Corridor at the moment, looking at South Africa, Maputo, Zimbabwe, Maputo, looking at certain of the key commodities. Our initial focus is obviously looking at the perishable strategy, which is a vertical of DP World. There's lots of opportunity for the northern part of the country for a more cost-effective solution for exporting product, and also from a time point of view. So open access in South Africa, really of interest. I think there's a few things that we need to get clear perspectives on in terms of, as I said, in terms of the infrastructure and the related maintenance of that infrastructure. We know that there's certain reports that have been done on the heavy haul lines. But when it comes to the lower density lines, the question is, have we got detailed assessment reports and what the cost implications are going to be and how is that going to be funded? Now, DP World will have an interest in looking at solutions for that, but I think there's going to be perfect clarity in terms of how we're going to actually achieve what's the recoverability model if funding is made available for infrastructure and the like. In the interim, we've already engaged with a number of operating companies, train operating companies that have been awarded slots of interest, and we're engaging with others that will be of interest to us for the corridors that we have interest in at this point in time. We generally look at the rail in South Africa, but if we're looking at the rest of Africa, it poses a very different challenge. So when you look at rail across South Africa in terms of the load capacity or loading capacity, and then as you go north, it gets lower and lower. So you actually have to, if you're solving for this, you've got to solve from theory of constraints point of view, where's your highest level of constraint. That's the first challenge. If we also look at the infrastructure condition north of South Africa, there's a lot more money that's required. And I think there's got to be a perspective together with government. There's got to be an understanding of how private sector can participate in rail infrastructure upgrades in piecemeal. If we start talking about countries and start talking about solving for entire corridors, I don't think that's going to be as easy as we think. It's going to require a significant amount of capital.
It's very simple. The cost of logistics and the time it takes for product to get into and out of Africa is too high and takes too long. If you fix that, you get economic growth because a lot of money goes back to the economy. That money will create jobs. It will allow FDI to flow, which will create more jobs. And that's how trade drives prosperity. The role that DP World's Jabal Ali and JAVSA plays in terms of the impact it has on the economy. 160,000 jobs created in that free zone. But $200 billion of trade that has a massive downstream impact on industry, on job creation, on economic growth, etc. So Africa, if you look at our biggest challenges, it's about job creation, it's about people living below the poverty line, and we want to improve the lives of people in Africa ultimately. I gave the example of Tanzania. $600 million went back into their economy, just with simply taking the waiting times of ships from 30 days to nothing. That's just one element of it. We need to keep everybody focused on what's job to be done. And we tend to overcomplicate, quite a simple thing. But I guess if it was simple, then they wouldn't need us. So that's the opportunity.